and it's sort of reassuring, really, because we do sometimes wonder. We're used to being in a situation where we get feedback immediately. This is the technique. This is what I'd like you to practice, and then you practice it, and it's either as I would like or it's not. So we make adjustments. That's a nice immediate feedback loop. So obviously the feedback loop is a bit longer and slower when we're operating on a video system, but it's still good, and it's still useful to give me that feedback or give us both the feedback. And what did you think of Maisie's PE class yesterday? The immediate feedback we got was really good, and we had loads of extra people joining in, loads of parents and other family members and dogs as well. And that was really good. I thought it was excellent. So hopefully you all enjoyed it, and you're looking forward to the next one, which will be tomorrow. And if you have any, we also had some feedback on that as well. People asking for a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. So give us your feedback, and we'll try to make adjustments so that it caters through as many people's preferences as possible. Thanks also to the other people who have given feedback on the karate and kickboxing classes. That's really good as well. And again, helps us both to decide what we're going to be doing in future lessons. Hello, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. I can hear you anyway, but I'll hear you even better when you put your headset on.
Yes.
Good.
Try not to deafen everybody as I
Yeah.
head.
Don't drop it. Everyone will be deaf.
Hello, everyone.
All right, so we want to go over some things that we've done during the week and just clear up one or two things. The first thing I think I need to clear up is the kata competition. We had a couple of questions about what I meant by just 3 steps on the basics. So I'm going to put my headset down and just demonstrate what I mean, just so that you're really clear.
Oh, yeah, put it down gently, I think.
Yeah.
So I went deaf.
What I meant on the basics is from set position, drum beat position. We don't need lots of steps, so it's just 1 step,
I hope you can see it.
2 steps, 3 steps, and turn. 2, 3, and turn. Yeah, so hopefully that makes sense. Don't want to confuse anyone. I appreciate we don't all have very much space, so we need to make adjustments. Don't we, Reg? Yeah, he says, yeah. Adjustments, he says.
It's simply for space, wasn't it?
Yeah, of course.
More than
of
anything.
course.
So 3 steps forward, 3 steps back, just so that you could definitely fit it in.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem with that. And you can do the basics in a compact fashion as well if you want. Just shuffle your stances. We just need to be adaptable, don't we? There's no point in saying, no, can't do it like that. That's not traditional. No. We just need to be adaptable. That's traditional, to be adaptable.
Yeah. So a couple of things before we start. If you're watching this podcast via our YouTube channel, well, everybody's technically watching it via the YouTube channel, but I mean, if you're actually on YouTube and watching this, please give us a like, please comment. We've got a live chat box on there where you can, I've got it all open here in front of me so we can see what you say as we go. If you're part of that WhatsApp group that some of us are in, we've got a competition team WhatsApp group, which has sort of turned into the live stream WhatsApp group.
Absolutely.
Drop us a message in that. I've got access to that here as well. We can discuss anything that you want to discuss as we go through the things that we've got to talk about today. If you're on the website and you're watching the video, especially if you're on a computer, excuse me, you can click the button at the bottom which says YouTube.
It's easy for you to say.
Yeah. On the actual video player, there's a YouTube button. If you click that, it just takes you straight through to YouTube, and then you can see that live chat and you can get involved in everything on there. Like I say, please leave a comment. Please subscribe to our channel. You get all the updates then, and you'll be kept up to date with everything, and it's nice for us to know that people are watching us.
So I'm just going to put in here, I'm going to get rid of Reggie's ball because in a moment he'll bark and it will deafen the both of us with these on. Oh, excuse
Deafen
me.
us. Deafen everybody at home. Oh.
No, you can't play with it. It's like a glass, Reg. No ball when there's glasses
Poor old Reggie's been confused, hasn't he? It's
Yeah, he's looking for people all the time.
there's no one around for him
really
to.
missing people.
He sort of, in the evenings, is looking around for people, isn't
Yeah,
he? He doesn't
he
quite
is.
understand what's going on, but
When we're here for the live classes, it's really strange because he really is looking around for people, isn't he?
yeah. So, we've had a good week.
We had an excellent week.
I hope everybody else has had a good week. Looking for those positive things that we spoke about last week.
The life
PE.
plan.
I heard you mention the PE.
Yeah, the PE
PE
went well. Good.
Thank you for your feedback, everybody, for the PE. I've got stiff legs today, so it obviously worked for me. I'd like to know your feedback some more. Remember, let me know how many calories you burnt and things like that. It's always good to know. And of course, anything that you want added or anything that you would like changed, again, let me know.
We mentioned last Wednesday's podcast, the life plan thing. That's all done. It's all ready to go, and hopefully will be available on the members page soon.
Yep.
It's like I said. I hope it's useful. I mean, obviously, it's not compulsory, but if it's of any use to you, then great. And people I've used it with, a couple of teenagers and a couple of people who are older. One significantly older. So it doesn't really matter what your age is. I think very young children might struggle to understand it, but keep it, and if you're a parent, keep it, and just feed it to them when they just get a little bit older, and just gradually mention that you do understand that you're training to be a grown up and whatever.
Yeah, we've had some good feedback, haven't we, from that already? Actually,
Absolutely, yeah, some really good.
Which is great. Brandon's just sent me a message. Hi, Brandon. Watching again. Gosh. He says, with the basics, can he do it like compact basics?
Yes.
If he doesn't have enough room?
Yep, absolutely.
There you go, Brandon. There's your answer.
Yes, certainly. You let me show you what I think he means by that.
Put that down gently.
I will. So what Brandon means, I think, is...
we can't actually hear you, so this is... Say that again and I'll repeat, sorry.
What Brandon means, I believe, is you do the first move and then shuffle for the second.
Yeah, so Brandon, if this is what you mean, then yes, you can do that. Compact basics is absolutely fine, no problem at all. If you definitely don't have enough space. But you can just do 3 shuffles, turn, 3 shuffles and turn, and then that's the same.
Can they hear me or not?
I'm not sure.
All right. So all we're looking for really on those basics is for you to start with your left leg, because that's what we always start with, for you to then transition to your right, so you know how to go from left to right, and then back right to left. So that's all we're after. So the first move, a transition into your right stance, a transition into a left stance, a turn, and then the same, and then turn again and finish. So, I mean, really, that's the whole purpose of basics, to practice moving from one leg in front to the other, doing a technique. So, that's perfect. We just have to go through those.
Yeah, it's similar to compact kata. All the reasons why we might do a compact kata applied to compact basics, don't
Yes,
they?
because basics are just components of kata. They're just elements of
I was
kata.
then about to say nice avoidance of the word elements, but you just couldn't resist.
No, I couldn't.
For anybody who watched last, what's today? Wednesday. This Monday's live stream, and wondered why I put the word elephant on the screen at one point. Whenever GMV says element, he has to have a little giggle and a snigger about elephants. So if at any point the word elephant appears on the screen, I haven't lost it. It's just because of that.
Yeah, it's what I call my automatic humour system. So I have this system in my head where I have certain triggers that just make me smile and chuckle to myself all day. And I've found that one of the ways to do it is to have certain words in my vocabulary that remind me of other words, so that every time somebody says the word element, I immediately think elephant, and that just makes me chuckle.
Yeah.
Especially if I put it in context.
Yeah.
If someone says these elements are doing such and such, I think, oh, elephant's doing that. That's funny. It's just complete nonsense, but it makes me chuckle. So I leave it in. It's
Any
good.
random words that appear on that live stream, I promise you are there for a purpose. It's not because I've actually lost the plot. So if you're not sure, just get in touch and I'll be sure to let you know
We can explain it. Can't we?
what I'm trying to relate to. Thank you, Becky. I quite like my T-shirt too. It's one of my favourites, not going to lie.
All right. Do you like my sweatshirt as well?
Yeah, it's really nice.
Nicely designed.
Don't forget about the 40th anniversary merchandise that we've got as well going on, because we've had some people put their names forward for merchandise, so we can order that when our embroidery company reopens again, can't we?
Yep, we can.
But if you'd like something that's limited edition, only available for this year, then you need to get your hands on it. It'll be available until the end of the year, but, try and get as much out of it as you possibly can, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. So, shall we move on to what we're going to have as the subject of today's discussion?
Yes, I think that's a good idea. I'm sure there was something else that I was going to mention. It might come back to me.
Yeah, that's fine. We're going to talk about personal safety, self-defense, whatever you want to call it, street awareness. All of these terms are really good. And I thought it was worth discussing because it's one of those things that people almost always associate with martial arts, and rightly so. And I just wondered what I'd love from you guys. Again, I'm always asking for feedback, but I wonder how many of you guys did martial arts, took up martial arts, wanted your children to do martial arts for the element of self-defense. All right, rather than just fitness, or not just fitness, but there are lots of reasons, aren't there? Fitness, health, making friends, being part of a group, all sorts of things, all sorts of reasons, and I think that self-defense is one of those reasons. So I'd be interested to know how many of you had that as a primary thing when you brought your children or when you came to class yourself, because that always interests me. And people would almost expect the martial artist to have some knowledge of personal safety. I'm sure you've found that in conversations you've had with people.
Yeah. I think especially, like you say, people who don't have any martial arts experience, a lot of the time my friends might say to me, what would you do if this happened? Or where do I stand if this happened? Or I needed to do this. And to be honest, I'll freely admit, when it comes to defending yourself and things like the law, I perhaps don't know as much as I could. I think it's something you could probably find out, but it always strikes me as that sort of thing that changes a lot anyway, changes with the times. So unless you're somebody who's actually involved in law, I guess, would be the subject, then you don't tend to really have all of the information at that time, do you?
No, it's a really interesting subject. To be honest with you, personal safety, self-defense, whatever, street awareness, whatever you want to call it, it's such an enormous subject, and it's so interesting, and it's so complicated. If you go back to the roots of martial arts, most martial artists, there are so many stories and ideas about where kung fu, karate, all these other things ever came from. But generally, there tends to be a belief or an unwritten agreement that they were all originally about defending either oneself or defending somebody else. So you're either part of a military group responsible for defending a person or a group of people or a country.
Well, things like taekwondo. Taekwondo is a military martial art, isn't it?
Yeah, or defending an individual or defending yourself. And they've all come from that situation. I can't think of a sport that's only about sport, but that has come from something else. So, for instance, kickboxing, as far as I know, was created from other martial arts just to be a sport.
Similarly to MMA.
Yes, of course, MMA, just a sport. But it's got roots in other martial arts that were much more fundamental in living life when times were rougher and tougher.
Yeah. It's a way to compete in martial arts, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just giving it a sporting outlet.
Yeah, it's a little bit like if if you're ever into the period of knights and horses and chivalry and whatever, I think that's a really interesting period of our history. And the jousting tournaments, or the tournaments that they used to have, where they would joust and they would fight with swords and whatever, those are really reflections of how martial arts tournaments are now. Because the reason the tournaments were invented back in the days of chivalry was because people wanted to keep their armies honed and finely tuned and sharp and able to compete, able to win and fight if war should ever happen, they should ever have to go to a battle. And one of the ways they found to do it was to get them to compete, and they compete against other armies who they weren't at war with, or they would compete within themselves, within a group, and each group of people would have their own tournament. It would be maybe, the north of England versus the south of England, but really they're on the same side.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a smaller event where you'd find the champion of the north and the champion of the
friendly,
south.
Yeah,
Yeah, of course. And you have the rules in place so that no one gets killed, no one gets hurt badly. And it's the same with our martial arts tournaments now, isn't it? It's the whole reason for a tournament. You have a set of fighting rules that minimise the chance of anyone being injured, and that's how it should be.
Yeah.
But having said that, that's where most martial arts came from. That core belief that you need to be able to defend yourself or other people around you, and I think that's a massively interesting subject, because times have changed since martial arts were created. It's never, it's very unlikely you're going to be attacked by somebody with a staff on the street these days. Whereas when half the people in the country
format,
carried a staff, then that was much more likely.
Of course.
But there are some really interesting aspects. I mean, I must have taught self-defense classes now, probably for 40 years. We've been teaching for 40 years. Maybe not quite 40 years, maybe 38, 39 years. But it's...
Here we go. Here's that it's not 40 years argument again.
Oh, yeah.
Let's not get started on that.
But anyway, and something I've found over the time is, you speak to a group of people. Let's say, for instance, let's pick on a group of people. Let's say I have a women's institute group say to me, "Would you come and teach us a 4-week self-defense class?" And you say, yeah, of course, because it's a nice way to promote your business. It's a nice way to socialise. It's a nice way to get to meet more people and whatever. And you turn up at the Women's Institute, and they're, obviously by the name, they're all female. They're probably 35 to 75 years old. They may not always necessarily be in peak physical condition. And they say to you, right, teach us some things that will save our lives if anyone ever attacks me.
Yeah.
Okay, and you want me to teach you this in 4 weeks?
Yeah. And this is, I think, one of the most frustrating things whenever you teach any kind of self-defense. So, for example, we practice in a class, I'll say to everybody, right, we're going to practice getting out of a wrist grab. So we're practicing getting out of a wrist grab, and somebody will inevitably say, yeah, but what happens if somebody doesn't grab your wrist, they grab you round the throat? Well, obviously, we wouldn't do that thing that we're doing now to get out of a wrist grab, to get out of a throat grab, would we? Let's be sensible. We'd do something different. And I think that is the bottom line of it, isn't it? There isn't, unfortunately, one move that fits all. There's not one secret self-defense technique that you can do that will get you out of a pickle, any kind of pickle, where you're, you might be grabbed by the arm, somebody might lift you up and try and pick you up and take you away, somebody might grab you around the throat. There's not one thing that you can do that will protect you from all of those things. But what we can do is we can practice lots of different things, can't we? And we can hope then that we have more tools in our arsenal, if you like, that sort of gives you a better chance if you were to get grabbed.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a, like I say, I mean, what is self-defense? Is it learning how to be safe when you're in the co-op? Is it learning how to be safe when you walk to the post office? Is it learning to be safe when you're in a pub or a nightclub? or in a football crowd. You know, it's such a wide range of things that it's just enormous. It's just a vast subject. No, it's a really interesting subject, and I'm not saying to anyone, don't worry about it, because it's so big, don't worry about it. There are some general rules that you can make, but you're absolutely right, Maisie. The number of times I've been in a group, and after a couple of minutes, it's clear that what that group want is one technique that they can use whenever against whoever.
Yeah.
It will always work. It will never fail.
And it's almost like the easy way out, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't really want to put too much effort in. I want one thing that I will never forget because it's just one thing. I don't really have to practice it too much. I don't have to stay on top of it. I've just got that one move that's going to save me no matter what. And it just doesn't exist. It sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many people do actually think that there is something like that you can do to get yourself out of anything.
Yeah. And your response to a situation needs to be graded according to what your experience, what your life skills, what your knowledge is, how much you're going to practice, how big you are in relation to the person who's attacking you or threatening you. There's so much that needs to be taken into account. And again, please don't think I'm saying to anyone, "Oh, forget it. It's not worth bothering." It's a really interesting subject. It's really good. And whether you're learning kickboxing, karate, or Muay Thai, all of those things that you're learning will certainly help. None of them will hinder you. None of them is going. Not one of those techniques will make you more vulnerable.
No. And to be honest, that's a good point because, for example, Coach Martin teaches Muay Thai. If Coach Martin was grabbed in a particular way, say somebody grabbed him round the throat, he would probably respond differently to how I would respond. He would use the things that he has, the knowledge that he has, the techniques that he knows to get out of that situation. And he'd probably do that successfully. The things that he might resort to might be elbow strikes and knees and things like that, whereas that's not something that I would go to straight away. But it doesn't mean that they wouldn't work. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't be as effective.
No, absolutely not.
So, again, lots of tools in your arsenal is just a good thing to have when it comes to self-defense. But I think one of the most important things when it comes to self-defense is common sense. And I think avoiding situations before they arise, being able to notice situations perhaps on the horizon and being able to take yourself away from that situation. I've taught self-defense courses in the past. A couple of years ago, I taught one to a big plastics company, a plastics factory in Norwich. They wanted self-defense for their employees. And we got onto the subject of walking home at night. And, the amount of people who walk home down a dark alleyway and they don't think anything of it. And I didn't want to make anybody paranoid by saying you must never walk down a dark alleyway. Don't be so ridiculous. But what I almost wanted to say to them was, or what I did say to them, in fact, was, do you think that's a good idea to be doing that sort of thing by yourself? Would it not just be easier it's maybe not easier, but better and safer to take the longer route home that might be lit by the streetlights, as opposed to using that shortcut, down that dark alleyway? And to be honest, that's something that I can relate to, because when I used to live in the city, I used to walk to here each day, walk to work, and on the way home in the evenings, I could have taken a shortcut that would have taken me not a very nice route, but it would have probably, cut 5-7 minutes off of my walk. And when it's cold, you think, oh yeah, I'll take the shortcut. It's cold, I want to get home, I'm hungry, I want my dinner, I'm tired, I need a shower, whatever. But you almost have to say to yourself, no, come on, be sensible. Let's avoid something before it happens.
Yeah, let's go the well-lit route. And seriously, I think that training people in self-defense, street awareness, whatever you want to call it, part of that has to be noticing those things.
They're like precautions, aren't they?
Yeah. There's a really good exercise that I think it would be good to practice, but let me take a step back for a second. I think it's important that we get balance here. Now, I don't want to worry anyone because we actually live in the safest time in history.
Yeah.
You know, the incidence of attack per capita, per person who's alive, is the lowest that it's ever been. All right, so that's worth remembering. We are safer than any of our ancestors have ever been before us. And I think the reason we hear about these things more is because the media is more on it. You know, they publicise everything more. We've got the internet, of course. So
You only hear about bad news, don't you?
yeah, of course.
You know.
So that's the first thing. Remember, we live in the safest time ever. Now, we need to balance between what's realistic and what's naive. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want anyone to think that there's always a present danger wherever they go, and they should always be worried. That is paranoia.
It is paranoia, and it's the kind of thing that leads to, never being able to sit in a room with your back to an open space,
Yeah.
or, you've got to always have a window or a reflection in sight so you can see what's going on behind you. And it sounds crazy, but that does exist.
Oh, yes,
You know,
I know lots of people like
we
that.
both know lots of people who are
Yeah.
like that, and if you're not careful, it can become a habit that you just slip into. And I've met people where you sit down and they'll go, "Oh, do you mind if I sit with my back to the wall because I don't like having an open space behind me?" You think, why? What's possibly going to happen in your own dining room? But yeah, you do have to be careful of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
For sure.
So you don't want to be paranoid. Excuse me. You don't want to be paranoid at the highest end of the scale. Now, let's go all the way to the other end of the scale. Somebody who thinks, I never need to worry. Nothing's ever going to happen to me. Everything will always be okay. That's naive.
Yeah.
All right. Now, that's maybe not as dangerous as being paranoid, but it certainly will ruin your life. Right? Or it potentially could ruin your life.
Yeah.
What we need to do is to be in the middle somewhere where we're sensible. We think,
sensibly cautious.
I need to pay attention to what's going on, but I don't need to spend my life worrying about it. I need to
drive you mad as well.
I need to not put myself in a dangerous position, but I don't want to always worry that where I am is a dangerous position.
Yeah. And I especially think this is a handy thing for kids to know.
Absolutely.
And again, if you're a young person, you're listening to this, we don't want to frighten you, but perhaps just make you think about something you may not have thought about already. And think about the things that you can do just to keep yourself safe. Simple things, really. Like I say about walking. If you're walking, if you're a young person, you're probably not going to be by yourself anyway. But if you're walking out and it's dark, don't be in the dark. Stay where it's light if you can. Those kinds of things.
A really good exercise that's worth trying. And don't drive yourself mad with this. Just do it occasionally. All right. So let's say you walk to the shops with somebody from your house to the shops and back. So you could spend the journey just in your mind talking through where you are. So you could say, okay, I'm going out of my house now, out of the door, and I just look both ways and there's no one around, so everything's fine. Stepping onto the pavement. Obviously, you don't want to walk into somebody with a bicycle or a scooter or something like that. They're not trying to hurt you, but you might get hurt accidentally. You want to pay attention to what's going on. You need to be aware. All right, now I'm going to go left because that's why I need to move. All right, is there anyone up there? No, it's fine. It's okay. Does anyone look suspicious? All right, now, like I said, if you thought like this all the time, it would drive you mad. You would go insane. But maybe once or twice just to make yourself aware. So you walk along, you say, I'm coming to the corner. I can't see what's around the corner. Is there a chance somebody could be around the corner? All right, so you just pay attention. You look round. It's okay. It's good. And just talk your way through going to the shops. You come out of the shops, you've got some things. Is there any chance that somebody could try and steal these things off me? Just pay attention, look each way. And all the way through your journey, just talk yourself through it. But be sensible. Don't think that at every chance, at every opportunity, there's going to be a person out there trying to hurt you, harm you, rob you, or something else. But doing that thing occasionally will help you to be aware, will help you to be alert to these things. Right? And it's just triggering things off.
I think, for me personally, one of the things that I see perhaps most often that I want to say concerns me, but it doesn't concern me. I don't lose sleep over it. But it shocks me, perhaps. It makes me think, wow. Is people who choose to go out, perhaps in the dark, with headphones on.
Yeah.
Or earphones, whatever you want to call them. Now, I do appreciate that, listening to music is great. Don't get me wrong, I listen to a lot of music myself. But I do think that being plugged into headphones, being plugged into something that's not in the real world, in the moment where you are, really distracts you from...
It separates you, doesn't it?
Yeah, separates you from everything that's going on around you. Now, I've seen frequently in the city people with headphones, earphones, same thing really. They'll step out into the road and there's a bicycle coming. I've seen that countless times, and somebody has to swerve, somebody gets agitated, there's a few strong words that are exchanged, and I've seen that frequently. Now,
and that's something from nobody trying to harm anyone else.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was about to say. That's not somebody who's actually going out of their way to run somebody over. And thank goodness it wasn't a car. Thank goodness it was a bicycle.
Yeah.
But still, the person on the bike may have come off and really hurt themselves. So it's one of those things where I think people don't even think of this. They put their headphones on, their earphones in, and they go out. And it doesn't even cross their mind that they have lost that little bit of reality, the connection to reality whilst they're doing that. Now, I'm not saying that you can't ever wear your headphones again or ever go out listening to music, of course. But I think that we need to be sensible, and I think that there is a time and a place for doing that sort of thing. And I don't think that being out by yourself in the dark or in a situation, where something may happen to you and you're minimising your chances, if you like, of sticking up for yourself, I don't think that's a good idea. So have a think about that. I think it's not really a super young person's thing to do. I think when you get to the teenage years and you want to block your parents out and things like that, I think that's when that comes around. But I see a lot of adults doing it as well.
I think it forms habits, doesn't it?
It does, again, yeah. It comes back to that thing of falling into habits that you're not even aware of.
Something that springs to mind when you talk about that is, do you remember when we were filming in Cardiff one evening? And we turned up at this location and we had to take all our stuff in via a fire exit right at the back of the building, which was in a trade car park, if you like, at the back of the building. We had to take all our equipment in, and then they said, all right, you need to lock your van up and whatever, because we're closing the fire doors now and whatever. So I went outside, locked the van up, and made sure that was all secure, and the fire door had shut.
Yeah.
So I had to walk all the way around the building. It's a big building. Right, now I thought to myself, I mean, I'm a fairly large person with what I would say a reasonable ability to defend myself. So I'm walking back around this building, and it's absolutely pitch black. There are no lights on at all. And I'm thinking to myself, this is exactly what I would tell people to avoid if I was teaching a course. And here I am doing it.
Yeah.
Through
no fault of your own.
Yeah, no
really.
fault of my own. But at least I noticed. At least I thought, this is not good.
This is not a situation I want to be in. Yeah.
And what I actually did was I took my phone out and I videoed my walk. Right? Not for any other reason than to be able to say to people, and I ought to share it really, to say, this is silly. I should not have done this. But what option did I have? The door was shut. I had to get back. Was I going to phone you and say, Maisie,
come and save me.
Come and save me. Come and escort me back into the building.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to happen. You were busy anyway. But it was a good example where I noticed. At least I noticed. So I was really alert, really aware. And nothing happened. I walked around the building. It was fine.
Yeah.
But my point is, I wouldn't have chosen to do that.
No.
You know, and I often make this point, 6'3", 115 kilos, 40 years a martial artist. I still don't put myself in dangerous positions if I can avoid it.
Because you don't want to have to test yourself,
No,
do you?
no, I don't.
You don't ever want, or I don't for sure, I don't ever want that possibility that I may be in a situation where I may come off worse. And of course it's a possibility, just because you're a black belt, just because you're a martial artist does not mean that you are going to win every and any situation that you find yourself in. And I think that a lot of martial arts that often gets overlooked is this awareness that we talk about, and this pre-planning and taking precautions to avoid those kinds of situations. Over my martial arts career, if you like, I think I'm coming up for 18, 19 years in martial arts now. I have lost track of how many of my friends have said to me, how many people have you knocked out? How many people have you punched really hard? How many people have you kicked in the head? And you think, well, quite a few in competitions, yeah, but never anybody in the street. And it's because I've done all these things that have led me to never get in that situation at all.
That's a perfect example, I mean, for years I worked on the door of nightclubs, clubs, pubs, and whatever. I can count on one hand the number of incidents I've had that actually turned into to a physical situation. Yeah. Because you do everything you can to avoid it.
Of course.
You look for things kicking off in the room, and you go and speak to people and say, I see you're getting agitated. It's probably a good idea for you to calm down.
That's effectively your job, isn't it? As somebody as a doorman, you are there. You're somebody in the room who's observing. You're paying attention to things that may kick off, to use the term. You're looking out for potential things. And I think that we could all benefit from doing that sort of thing. And if you see something, it's like, what? Not going that way? I'm going this way because there's something over there that doesn't look very nice, And it's common sense, but I don't think everybody thinks of it. This is the thing; it's drawing it to your attention in the first place.
Yeah, and again, let's go back to that issue we spoke about a moment ago. The last thing I want to do is make you worry all the time. We live in the safest time in history. Let me just say that once more. However, pay attention.
Yeah, of course.
Pay attention to what's going on, because bad things do still happen.
Yeah.
Just not very often.
And they always will.
Of course.
It's never going to be...
People are people, aren't they?
Exactly. It's never going to be a society or a world, if you like, a planet where there's never anything bad that happens. I don't want to sound really morbid. I don't want to scare people.
No. But you're right. The most important part of any self-defense is to not put yourself in a position where you have to use physical self-defense.
Yeah, and
because that's the key thing.
I suppose the next step from that is it's all, well and good saying, don't get yourself in a situation. But of course, if you do find yourself in a situation, one that you didn't expect, one that you didn't perhaps walk straight into, what are the precautions, or what are the things that we can do to help ourselves in that situation? And we had a chat yesterday, didn't we, when we were talking about today's podcast, about knowing how far you will go to keep yourself safe. To what point will you go to just keep yourself safe? And you said to me, if somebody was to grab me, somebody your size perhaps grabs me and tries to take me away, well, you'd flail, when you'd do all of those things, you'd scream, you'd try and get that person off of you. Okay, but what if that doesn't work? What's the next step you're going to go to? So I think that's something we're going to talk about, isn't it?
Yeah. Something that's really important, I think, is if you ever find yourself in a confrontation, a real life confrontation, I think it's worth spending a moment trying to work out what the person wants. So if they want to rob you, if they just want your valuables and they look threatening, just give it to them. Let them have it. Don't have the confrontation.
It's certainly not worth it, is it?
Absolutely
and that's
not.
how I see it in my head. If somebody wants my phone, take it. Really, when it's material things like that, it really, really doesn't mean enough to me.
No.
To want to hang on to it.
For me, speaking personally, if somebody said to me, "Give me your phone," and they didn't have a weapon or a gun or anything,
Yeah, you'd say no.
I'd say get lost,
Yeah.
But if they
Yeah.
pulled a knife out and said,
Yeah.
give me your phone, there's my phone. Do you want my car keys? Here's some money as well. You can have everything of mine that's of value because I don't want to risk being stabbed. Anyway, so what you need to do is to establish what is it. Is it a robbery? That's, I think, perhaps less dangerous than if it's somebody who's just angry and wants to take it out on somebody.
Yeah, somebody who is looking for a fight.
Yeah, looking for a fight.
Will want a fight.
Yeah.
That's what they're after. And they probably won't care how they get that fight, how they get that response from you, but because that's what they want, that's what they're going to try and get.
Yeah. And I think that's a much more dangerous situation, because it's a much more difficult thing to get out of. If it's a robbery, give them what they want, and it'll end, won't it? It'll go. If it's someone looking for a fight, then explain you really don't want to fight. I'm not interested. I'm not. And of course, with the often male to male, you get this almost this chest bumping syndrome. Yeah. Come on then. Well, the only way that's going to go anywhere is if both of you do it. If one of you says, no, you know what? You're far too tough for me. You look like a real handful. I'm not willing to risk it. Here's your ego. Let me give it all to you, your ego, and you are so strong and tough that I don't want to get into any sort of altercation with you. Wow, you're awesome. If someone's just trying to turn around afterwards to their mates and go, yeah, see, I told him, yeah, he was really worried. Yeah, okay, you can think I'm worried, and I might have been worried, but at least I didn't get in a fight.
And it also goes back to that thing we were talking about last week about not caring about what other people think.
Yes, of course.
So
So that's something I would do, and I think that happens in school a lot. It certainly did when I was at school. Somebody would perceive that somebody else had dissed them. Is that the right word?
it used to be a word when I was at school. I don't know if it's still
Disrespect them,
around.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're dissing me.
Yeah, you dissed me. And in my opinion, just explain to the person you didn't. No, I'd never do that. Why would I do that? You're so tough, and you're scary, and I don't want. I would never diss you. No, of course it's just a mistake. I'm sorry if what I said was taken badly. But it was just a mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we shake on this? Yeah. That's the best way out. Don't turn yourself into a victim. Don't do the, oh no, please don't hurt me, I'm just weak and feeble. Don't do that. Just say to them, it was a mistake. If you thought I disrespected you, then I'm sorry, it was just a mistake. And let's move forward. Let's not get into a fight about it. It's important that you don't turn yourself into a victim, because if you look weak and feeble, then obviously every potential bully in the area is going to go, victim, I'm after that person.
Must pick on that person.
Yeah. So don't do that. Don't make yourself a victim. But apologising and explaining that a mistake has been made, well, apologising if what you said has been taken the wrong way is fine. Just don't be weak and feeble and squirm and do all this sort of thing, Just be clear and say, no, it's not. I don't know. And sometimes, I've explained this to people and they say, yeah, but I could have had him. I would win. Yeah, okay. Maybe you could have won, but maybe you wouldn't. And maybe his mates would have joined in. And maybe this.
And how much trouble are you going to get in
absolutely.
afterwards?
Do you need it,
It's just hassle, isn't it? It's just hassle that you don't need. And it's easier to stay out of it rather than get involved with it.
Yeah. It's unusual that a stranger thinks you've disrespected them. It can happen. And sometimes you'll bump into somebody. You'll think nothing of it. Maybe you walk some bump.
And I want to say as well, a stranger who, isn't under the influence of alcohol, a stranger who isn't under the influence of drugs, somebody who is sane of mind, who will suddenly say, hang on a minute, you disrespecting me for no reason, I think is really, really unlikely.
Yeah. So really, those are the two things. You need to know what's going on. Why has this happened? And those are the two most common reasons that I can think of. And both have a fairly simple way out, without making yourself a victim. Just, no, I'm not playing this game. I don't want to do it.
Yeah, so, I mean, getting back to your thing about if somebody came up to you and they said, give me your phone, give me your wallet, give me your keys, whatever, and you felt threatened by that person, you would give them to them. To what point would be the thing where you decided, no, actually, I'm going to step in here and I'm going to do something to protect myself, if you like?
For me, and I think, I'm not saying this is what it has to be for everyone, but for me, this is the situation. If somebody wants my possessions, I'd rather not give them to them, but I will if I'm in danger.
Yep.
If somebody wants to humiliate me, and not because I don't want to be humiliated, but because I understand if they want to humiliate me, there's potentially no end to it.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to humiliate me, put me down, hurt me in front of their friends, do this, that, or the other, that's when I fight. Because I think that's a slippery slope to either becoming a victim long term or to being seriously hurt there and then. Because I think you just have to say, well, you've got no reason to hurt me other than to make yourself look more powerful than me. I'm happy to agree to that right now if we can end this. Yes, you are more powerful than me, or you're in a more powerful position than me right now. But if you insist on hurting me now, then I'm going to fight back, because this is not going to go well. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. And that's the point at which I would say enough.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that's a point that everyone has to do it.
No, it's not the same for everyone.
But my advice would be, that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I can't see any situation where somebody who just wants to hurt me for no reason other than it gives them pleasure.
Yeah.
I can't see that's going to end well if I don't fight back.
No. I think that's a good thing to say, but I also think that you have to think about not only protecting your physical well-being. So if somebody is aggressive to you, actually defending yourself physically, but also thinking about your, in a day and age where everybody's talking about mental health, thinking about your mental health and thinking, how am I going to be affected by this if I don't do something?
Yeah.
I may not just be physically hurt, so I might, have bruises, cuts, scratches, that kind of thing. But how am I going to feel afterwards? Am I going to be confident about going out and doing all those things by myself or even with others if I let this person do these things to me?
Yeah. And the thing is, if somebody's going to hurt you, they're going to hurt you anyway. What you do back probably won't make them hurt you anymore. They're obviously getting pleasure out of wanting to hurt you.
Yeah.
You need to say, no, this is it. I'm making a stand here. My wife used to have a really good expression, and something that's really nice to know if you're married to somebody. I used to know, without being disrespectful to my wife, and Mary, if you're watching and you're working with Judy at the moment, I'm certainly not being disrespectful, but she is a little bit older now. When she was in her 30s...
You're going to be in trouble when you go home, no matter what you say.
Yeah, I absolutely knew when my wife was in her 30s, 35, that if anybody tried to give her any hassle and tried to do anything bad to her, while she was conscious, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think that's, a good thing for everyone to have. If you're unconscious, you have no control over what happens to you because you're unconscious, and you physically, mentally cannot defend yourself when your body is shut down. But I think what you can do is prepare yourself and make sure that you have everything in place to avoid getting to that point. It's like we often talk about, and I know I've had this conversation with Master Ward, and you'll be doing self-defense, and of course the inevitable question, what happens if you get on the floor, if somebody takes you down to the floor? well, you obviously do something different. But the thing is to try and avoid ending up on the ground in the first place. Do everything you can to avoid being put into that position.
Yeah.
Because in any situation, being on the ground, I think is a lot more risky, a lot more dangerous than being stood up and being able to move around and get out of a situation, hopefully.
Absolutely. And the next most important thing, practice getting up.
Yeah.
Because you might trip, you might fall, you might lose your balance, you might slip on something. And practice getting up and getting up safely. That's something that's a really important part of street awareness and being alert. Something else that's super important is your voice. Using your voice the right way. Obviously, yell and scream. That's fine if you need to. Bring attention to yourself. And I always remember one of the instructors of EFC used to always say, "Yell fire, not help," because people will run to see what's happening if you yell fire. People will run away if you say help.
Yeah.
And that's a really useful thing. If you start yelling fire, fire, people will go, "Oh, what's going on here?" If you say help, a lot of people will run away and say, "No, I'm not going to get involved with that." And sometimes you don't really need their help. You just want them to be there, so the person who's hurting you thinks, "I can't do this with all these people around." And that's often enough.
So I think as well, if you're a young person, and by a young person I mean somebody who's under 18, somebody who's not an adult, I think this is a good thing for you to think about and perhaps discuss with your parents as well, and come to a thing where you have a plan, if you like, a plan of action in case something happens. It may never happen. You may go through your whole life and you are never ever faced with any kind of situation like this. And to be honest, I think that's probably more likely.
Far more likely.
Than finding yourself in a situation to begin with. So it's not something that you need to worry about. But with, like most things are so much easier to deal with if you've already planned them, if you've already thought about things, you've prepared things for yourself, rather than going in, completely blind, if you like. It's like an exam. You've got an exam coming up. What do? You revise for that exam. If you go into that exam having not revised, it's a lot more difficult than if you have done your revision. And I think that it applies to life as well, doesn't it? And it applies to this kind of thing especially. So come up with a plan.
What you said to me earlier, and I think I missed the point a little bit, you said, at what point would I do something, and then what would I do? And I didn't answer the what would I do thing.
Yeah, and I think, to be honest, what would you do, I think, is something that we can probably round up on, because I think that, well, I mean, by all means go ahead, but I think what you would do depends on the situation that you're in,
Absolutely,
doesn't it? And what you are faced with. Because I think that, I know for you, I mean, I asked you at what point what would happen, and I knew the answer already, but I think it's something useful for everybody else to know, or to just think about for themselves. But I mean, go ahead.
Well, I think there are conflict is an enormous sliding scale of severity. So from the not very severe to the life-threatening.
Well, I think humiliation is perhaps at that lower end, isn't it? When you compare it to life-threatening.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is definitely at the lower end.
So I think when you're down at the not very nice but no danger, and like, I don't know, kids calling you names in a playground, work colleagues being unpleasant to you, it really, if you can just get your mind right so that you can think, Jesus, they're not very nice people, I'll ignore that completely. That's fine.
Yeah.
Right. One quick caveat on that. I remember teaching a self-defense group, and somebody said to me, "Everyone's always horrible to me." And I said, "Take a look at yourself then. If you're right and everyone is always horrible to you, what does that say about you?"
There's got to be something about you that most people don't like.
It was probably my least politically correct statement in my whole life.
But sometimes, do you know what? I think you have to be what they would say politically incorrect, because you just don't get through to people unless you're, you're side skirting around things. Well, Have you taken the time to look at yourself and to make sure that there's nothing going on in your life that's upsetting you? It's going to take us twice as long to get to the actual thing that we need to say. So
you know the expression my dad used to say to me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'll say it once more.
We've spoken about this in previous podcasts,
have.
but I don't know if we've mentioned it on these podcasts.
My dad used to say to me, and he was very to the point, my father, he would say, if one person doesn't like you, it might be you and it might be him. It might be your fault, it might be their fault. If two people don't like you, it's twice as likely to be your fault. If three people don't like you, wake up, smell the coffee, it's you. You're doing something wrong. You're doing something unpleasant. And ever since that time I've remembered the number of times I've had unpleasant people tell me everyone's unkind to them. And you think, well, what do you expect?
Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was little, especially, if you came home from school and said, I might have said to my mum, so-and-so was horrible to me today, she'd say, well, what did you do to them? What did you do to make them do that?
Yeah,
and you
absolutely.
think, yeah, all right, fair point, actually, yeah. So...
You've got to take responsibility,
It's exactly that, and it's like, teacher sent me out of class today, they clearly don't like me. Yeah, I'm sure they just sent you out for no reason. They just said, there you go. Yeah. No, they didn't. You did something to warrant being sent out of the classroom.
Take responsibility.
And it's the same with life, isn't it? It's the same, with anything in life. Slightly off topic.
Yeah, let's get back to our scale.
Nonetheless.
So we're down here at this end where things are unpleasant but not dangerous. Then you've got a massive section in the middle where... and I think this is still a big range, but this is where you could be physically harmed, but your life not threatened. All right, so you might be bumped and bruised and given a dead leg down at this end, and up here you might even get cut or a bit of concussion or whatever, but it's not going to threaten your life. Now that's probably the widest range of things that you'll face. And then above that, you've got life-threatening, where you really feel in danger immediately. All right, and I think during this period of where your life's not in danger, but you could be hurt, you need to decide what you're going to do. And I've got a very clear thing in my mind, is that I will resist taking action for as long as it's sensible to. But once I start, I will do anything to end that fight, to end that confrontation, without threatening the other person's life. All right? I don't want to threaten their life either, because that's going to be trouble for me. All right, but I would be quite happy to cause them harm, but not threaten their life if they're not threatening mine. Yeah, so that's for me. And remember, these are my rules. They don't have to be yours, but if you want to use them as a guideline and it helps, okay. When we get to the life-threatening thing, if someone's threatening my life, then I think it's okay. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah,
and I'll do my very best to make sure it's not my life that ends.
Yeah, and I think it's important to say as well, I know you've said this already, but it is different for everybody. Everybody will have different points, that they do different things. And if you decide that you do things differently to how you may do it or how I may do it, then that's okay. But it has to be what sits well with you in your own head.
Yeah, you have to live with it, don't you?
And your parents as well. Again, if you're somebody who's under 18, then things for you are different because, I hate to say it, but you're not an adult. You don't have the ability really to speak for yourself in terms of the law and things like that. That falls upon your parents. So it's important that you have this discussion with them and that you do agree on things. And that you come to a decision that you all agree on, really.
Yeah, I mean, you've often heard me say, if you train with me and we do self-defense or street awareness in the class, I often say to you, right, these are my rules, but if they're different to your parents, listen to your parents, because your parents are the ones who are responsible for you. So you must abide by their rules, and you must, right? Because they are responsible for you until you're 18. You are completely their responsibility. So you have to go with their rules. But if they agree that mine are okay, then okay, you can use those anyway.
And I think as well, I imagine what most people are now thinking is that if you, were to go to that point of you're in a situation, you feel as though your life is threatened, and you do everything that you can to make yourself safe, but something then happens to the person who has tried to do something to you, what would happen to you? What are the repercussions of you doing what you have done to keep yourself safe? Now, again, at the beginning of this chat, I spoke about not knowing everything when it comes to law and where you would stand. So I don't want to say for definite or not what would happen, but I think you do have to be careful when it comes to defending yourself to a point where the other person comes off worse. And, like we always say in class, you are defending yourself, you're getting yourself out of a situation and getting yourself to safety. When we talk about the 4 Ds, the last D is disappear.
Disappear, yeah.
And it's not stand
It's not
over
stand
your
over
opponent
your opponent with your arms in the air
and dismember them.
Yeah.
It is disappear. It's do what you can to make this person stop. Maybe you make their nose bleed and they're ow, ow, ow for a second. And in that time where they're saying ow, you've got yourself away. And I think that really that's the bottom line of it, isn't it? We're not saying you go to that point where you commit murder or anything like that.
No, not at all.
All you're doing is what they would call reasonable force to get somebody off of you.
As far as I understand this, and I'm quite happy to be corrected, it has changed a little bit over the years. But as far as I can understand it, you're allowed to use as much force as necessary to end the situation and until you feel safe. All right. So, and that varies according to how threatened you feel.
Yeah, and it's this term that gets thrown around of reasonable force.
Yeah.
Well, what's reasonable? What can you say is reasonable? Because reasonable to me, at 60 kilos, is a lot different to reasonable to you at 115 kilos. We have to. I don't understand reasonable force. I'm not going to lie to you. Is reasonable force just getting somebody off of you and stopping them from chasing you? I don't know, but how do you stop somebody from chasing you? Do you make them unconscious or do you just give them a bloody nose?
Well, this brings us on to a slightly different thing of preemptive force.
Yeah.
So, as far as I understand this, and again, if we have any lawyers out there or any policemen who can correct me on this, I'm happy to be corrected if I've misunderstood. But the way I understand it is, if you come up to me and threaten me, and I feel sufficiently in danger, I can take the first action. I can strike first to keep myself safe. Mm-hmm. I have to be able to think to myself, Jesus, I was scared.
And then you have to be able to prove it as well.
Course,
if it gets to that point where you do have to prove it.
But that makes so much more sense to me. I'm never going to stand and let someone take a pot shot at me. If I think they're going to take the shot, then I'm going to act first.
Yeah, of course.
Because my reactions aren't anywhere near as fast as my actions.
Yeah.
I've got to wait. My brain's got to process, incoming strike, there it comes, process the block, and then a counter-attack. Yeah. That's going to take much longer than him just doing the strike.
Yeah.
So I think that's okay. But again, if anyone knows differently, then let me know. What definitely is not okay is if I felt threatened, I made the strike, the person went down, and then I got on top of them and pummeled them. That's definitely not okay. Because
it's not reasonable,
no,
is it? That's
strike,
that thing.
That first strike ended the confrontation. If it ended the confrontation, then that would be it, and I would be obliged to not jump on him and pummel him. So I think you just have to just be careful. Don't turn yourself into somebody. And how would you feel anyway?
This is the thing that I said, this mental health thing. You have to live with your actions, whatever those actions are, whether it's you're going to be humiliated for the rest of your life, lacking in confidence for the rest of your life, or whether you're going to have to walk around knowing that you beat somebody to a pulp, whatever that may be, you are going to have to live with that. So
I have 2 instances in my life where I know somebody who's been in a situation where they've killed someone where they didn't mean to. And one was someone got stopped in their car, and they got out of the car and they sort of did this. They hit the person once. The person fell over and hit their head on the curbstone and they died. Another one was somebody in a pub. It was just a pub fight, a bit of pushing, whatever. One punch thrown, fell on the floor, hit his head on something hard and metal. He died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you have to think. I mean, those are perhaps not great examples because the person wasn't trying to kill the other person.
No. But it doesn't alter the fact that they did.
And then how do you feel about it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and one of those people went to prison, the other one didn't. You know, there are no rules about. It's just whether a jury of people will say it's reasonable or not.
Yeah.
You know?
So I think really, again, you know, we're not trying to scare anybody, but what we are trying to do is to encourage you to think about things before they do actually occur in your life.
I would like
if
to.
they occur, you know, because they may not, like we've said, they probably won't occur. But it's so much better to have a plan in place for if they do than not having a plan in place at all.
Yeah, and never try to plan and make decisions under stress.
Mm-hmm.
Make your decisions before you get stressed. And then when you're under stress, you just implement the decisions you've already made.
Yeah.
You know, trying to think clearly when you're scared, it's not going to happen.
No.
Or when you're angry, that's not going to happen either. Make your decisions in advance and say, if I get angry, this is what I decide when I'm not angry. I'll just stick to it when I'm angry. If I get scared, this is what I'm going to do because I can't make a good decision when I'm scared.
Exactly.
Decisions already made in advance.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's it reminds me of a few years ago when I left here and I got followed.
I remember that.
Do you
remember it well?
It's you know, I left here and it wasn't even dark. I was walking home again. This is when I lived in the city, and you'll obviously know where the academy is if you're watching this. Well, I assume you know where the academy is. And I was walking home, and I happened to walk past not a very nice pub, shall we say, and again, loads of people around. Oh, it wasn't dark. It was daylight. It was in the summer. I think it was around June time. And this guy started to follow me, and he'd come out of the pub, and I could tell that he wasn't thinking straight, shall we say. He wasn't thinking clearly. He was under the influence of something, perhaps more than one thing. And he started to follow me, and I thought, oh, God, I just want to go home. You know, when it gets to that point, you think, oh, really? So, and I confronted him. I said, why are you following me? And I'm not. I said, yes, you are, and you have been for a little while now. And he was really quite persistent, and you know, he wanted to shake my hand and not touch me, but you know, he wanted to
contact. He wanted
contact,
get in
and
your
he
personal
wanted
space, didn't he?
me to, you know, perhaps go with him or whatever. And thankfully, I wasn't too far away from here, was I? And
No.
I just started to walk back to here because I thought there were still classes going on. And like I say, it wasn't late. I reckon it must have been about 6 o'clock in the evening. And I thought, rather than keep walking home, where I will be alone until I, you know, get to my door and close the door, I thought, rather than continuing on this journey, I will walk back to the academy, you know. And I wouldn't say that I felt as though I was in any immediate danger. He wasn't violent. He wasn't, you know, pushy. He didn't try to grab me or anything like that. But he did try to. Well, he followed me for one thing.
Yeah.
Denied that he was following me.
My opinion was that he was trying to get in some way, make some contact with you.
Exactly. That he wanted me to be on his side,
Yeah.
and I wasn't prepared, obviously, for that to happen. So I just came back here, and that was the end of it. So I'd already diffused that situation. Now, could I have punched him and knocked him out? Probably. You know, did I want to? Yes, but I didn't. I chose to come back here, and you know, step away from the situation entirely. So I think had I have not thought about these things before that situation occurred, I could have really gone into a panic mode and thought, well, what do? You know, he hasn't grabbed me, so I can't try and get him off me because he's not holding me. all he's
He
doing
didn't say
is...
anything abusive or rude,
No,
did he?
he wasn't abusive or rude, but he did have what we would call an ulterior motive, I think, is the
Yeah.
the thing. So, and he was definitely drunk.
Or something.
Or definitely something else.
Yeah.
So again, just think about these things. Did I expect that thing to happen? No. Will it ever happen again? I don't know, but probably not, I think is the answer.
Yeah,
I live in a
probably.
much nicer area now, I have to say. But it just goes to show how things can happen when you really, really don't expect them to, and admittedly, I was by myself, but it was 6:00 in the evening on a summer's evening,
Yeah, it
and you
wasn't
just
dark or
don't
anything, was
expect
it?
things
Yeah.
to happen like that. And I think the fact that he wasn't aggressive or any of those things sort of took me by surprise more than anything, I would say.
I'll tell you something just quickly before we finish, before we wind this up. I think that, and this may sound bizarre to start with, but I think doing tournaments makes you much more able to deal with stressful situations.
Yeah.
Because when you do a tournament, whether it's kata or fighting, kata less so in terms of being one-on-one with combat, but you're still in an area where there's pressure.
There's enormous pressure. I think there's more pressure.
And you still have to keep
when
a
it
clear
comes to
head
kata.
and do the right things when the pressure is on. Right, so that's good. Now, if you have that and you're in a fighting competition of some kind, it's enormous. It's even more intense. And I think the more you can get used to that, being in that situation where the pressure is on you, you've got to do well. And there's a time limit in a tournament, and maybe there may be people watching as well. All right, so that gets you used to dealing with pressure. And now I can appreciate that's a completely different situation to real life, but I do think that it helps. It helps you to deal with pressure and pressure situations. But everyone has their own opinion.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I hope that's been a useful discussion topic. To be honest, I feel as though it is a topic that could go on and on and on. We could have a whole series of these podcasts, I feel, on self-defense, on street awareness, whatever you like to call it, and how you can prepare yourselves for things before they happen. But we have tried to narrow it down a little bit, haven't we, and condense it.
Just since we started, I would just wonder whether it would be really useful to create a, beginner's guide to personal safety or something, so that people can just have some guidelines that, again, they can follow and put in place in their life that may help them without making them paranoid.
Yeah.
If that would be of interest to anyone, let us know.
Please do.
And I'll be happy to create it for you, or we could do it between us, couldn't we?
Yeah, and let us know what you thought of today's podcast. And your thoughts, of course. We'd love to know your thoughts. Did you think we were just talking a load of rubbish? Or did you think that actually it was quite a useful topic that, you probably hadn't thought about before? Or maybe you'd thought about, but you hadn't thought about planning out or thinking about before. So let us know. We'd love to know. One more thing I just wanted to mention before we do go is the worksheet that we spoke about last week.
Yeah.
That is now going to go onto the website this afternoon after today's podcast.
The life planning one.
The life planning one, yes. Yeah. And did you also want to mention the stress buster?
Oh yeah. I was going through some old files. We've got a little bit more time, haven't we, these days? I was going through some old files, and I found a Word file, a document that was something I created in 1990 something. I think 1995.
I thought you told me 2008.
Maybe. You could be right. Anyway, created it some time ago.
More than 10 years ago, let's put it that way.
And it's called the Stress Buster Toolkit. And I read through it and thought, actually, this might help some people. So you've got that, haven't you? That's already.
That's going to go online this afternoon as well. So if you fancy having a look at that, then do. At the minute, when you go onto the website, you've got that big red banner and it says virtual classes, and then there's another button that says BBA lockdown sheet. I'm going to move that lockdown sheet button, and everything's now going to be on the virtual classes page, and there'll be a little bit for documents as well. So if you're looking for any of the documents that we have spoken about, if you're looking for the life planning sheet, if you're looking for the Stress Buster toolkit, if you want to do the lockdown sheet and you still haven't done that, you'll still be able to get it, but it'll just be in a different place. It'll all be explanatory anyway, self-explanatory when you log on and you see it. Don't forget about the PE tomorrow. Another
Yes,
PE
PE tomorrow,
class,
yeah.
12:30.
But no, PE class at 11.
11. Why did I say 12:30?
But that
Because
was
we started
today,
today at 12:30. 11, not 12:30. I'll be finished by 12:30. 11 o'clock. Join me again from my garden for more PE. If you've got any recommendations or suggestions,
Requests.
then yes, let me know. Nothing too crazy. Remember, we're trying to make it available for everyone, regardless of their fitness ability. If you are somebody who did the PE lesson yesterday, perhaps you're a parent. Again, I'd love to know how you're feeling today, if you're feeling sore, if you're feeling stiff.
Or if they're feeling great.
Or if you're feeling great,
Yeah.
how did you feel for the rest of the day? After
Did you have an endorphin buzz for the rest of the day?
After you did that little bit of exercise yesterday, did you feel, that like it set you up for the day? So yeah, please just get in contact. It's good to know that people are watching. I can see people are watching. It doesn't tell me who's watching, but I can see that some people are.
Good. And then we've got live classes Friday again.
Live classes on Friday. Live every day from one location or another. We are live.
Yeah, super. Hope you're enjoying the classes. I'm doing some other little bits and pieces. What I'm going to call this little series Off the Mark, and really it's for people who want to make those first steps into being a little bit more fit, a little bit more in shape.
Yeah.
And it really is off the mark from couch potato
It's
to
really beginner, isn't
not
it?
quite couch
Absolute
potato.
beginner.
All right, so it's really low level stuff, but hopefully it shows you a pathway to becoming more fitter.
More fit, yeah.
Fitter.
And the deadline for the competition for the masked
Yep.
performance competition is Sunday. We are also going to be holding a competition for kickboxers.
Yes,
Because
we
we
are.
want you to get involved as well.
Can we?
Should we mention that now or should we mention it after Sunday?
Let's mention it after Sunday.
Yeah, good idea.
Let's not confuse people.
But be warned, it's coming. You have a competition and we want you to get involved.
Yep.
Please. Right, I'm going to head back over that way because I need to stop the live stream.
Okay.
But it's been nice to catch up with you all. Like I say, feedback's always good. And I'll see you tomorrow at 11 for some PE.
Brilliant stuff. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope it's been useful. I mean, the thing is, Maisie and I sit and plan and try to make these sessions, everything we do, we try and make it useful. Try and give you value for money and try and make everything appropriate. We realise not everything is appropriate for every person, but we try and make as much appropriate for as many people as possible. Okay, well that's just about it for today, and I look forward. You won't see me tomorrow because the camera will be on Sensei Maisie, but I'll be doing this and answering your messages, and I'll be passing on any messages that you do send in to Maisie via her earphones. All right, great stuff, and I'll see you soon. Keep safe.